Okay, so the next area that is being discussed under the subtopic proteins is about the polar and the non-polar proteins, or not, sorry, non-polar amino acids. So, of course, since proteins serve different functions, they're capable of being made up, or they're actually made up of different types of amino acids. So in this case, we have polar and non-polar amino acids. So previously in the chemistry of life, the characteristic of a specific molecule determines the properties that it gives. So in this case, in the case of non-polar polar amino acids, they have this hydrophilic properties wherein they are capable, polar amino acids are capable of interacting with water, whereas for non-polar amino acids are hydrophobic. Hence, they cannot interact with water. So actually the distribution of polar and non-polar amino acids influences the function and the location of proteins. So since amino acids serve several functions, majority of the amino acids are polar because majority of the proteins that are being used in the body are made to interact with water. So in this case, I have drawn plasma membrane here, and it actually serves, the protein serves here as the membrane proteins. Okay, so the ones that are in purple are the phospholipid bilayer, and the ones in red is the membrane proteins. So here, the membrane proteins are actually made up of a combination of polar and non-polar amino acids because there are certain properties, or there are certain areas within the proteins here that is interacting with the water, and the ones that are interacting with the phospholipid bilayer. Okay, so here, so the areas that has contact with water outside the cell and inside the cell is usually arranged here. Okay, so the ones that I'm highlighting as green, they are made up of polar amino acids. Okay, so here, so the topmost area, so this is actually an example of a channel protein wherein it allows passive movement of substances inside the cell. So since the molecules can passively enter the cell through the use of channel proteins, especially water can just interact with the channel here. So since they have a direct interaction, since water has a direct interaction with this amino acid in this area, therefore the amino acids that should be found in this area are polar amino acids. Whereas for in this area that I'm going to highlight as black, okay, since they don't get to interact with water and they are interacting with the fatty acid chains of the phospholipid bilayer, which are nonpolar, therefore the amino acids that should be arranged in this area are, or should be nonpolar amino acids as well. So the arrangement of the polar and nonpolar amino acids influences, or actually dictates the function and the location of the proteins within, let's just say, within the plasma membrane, and also for different functions of proteins in the body. The next area that we are going to discuss under proteins is, of course, the protein functions. So because of the structural arrangement of the amino acids, it actually results to the proteins being given with a specific function. So since the usual area wherein proteins are being used is for structure, they're also being used for other functions as well. So I have written here, I have made a schematic diagram wherein we can easily show to our students that proteins can serve other functions apart from structural and support. So because of the biochemical structure of these the proteins, they're also given several physiological roles. So apart from the structural support, proteins can also serve as an enzyme, and we already know that enzymes are being used by the body so that it can alter it can actually change the substrate into a product. So we are able to change molecules inside the body because of enzymes, and it only uses a very small amount of energy for that. So since chemical reactions occur within cells all the time, and cells actually use enzymes as a molecule as a catalyst, okay, for these molecules to be changed from one form into another. Okay, so proteins can also be used as a hormone. So hormones, they are chemical messengers being used by the body so that the target organ that the hormones is acting upon can be altered. Meaning, for example, if we have, let's just say, the hormone, growth hormone. Growth hormone is a type of hormone that is acting upon on the bones and the muscles so that it will be prodded to grow. Okay, so in that sense, the students will have an idea of how the hormones are actually working. If the students would already have a background regarding human physiology, then it's better to explain about hormones already. So, or give a more distinct example. So the next example that proteins can serve is defense. So in the case of defense, we are able to protect our body against antigens or against pathogens. It's because of the production of the antibodies. Antibodies per se are actually made up of proteins, and they are being produced by our lymphocytes, so that in the event that we are being invaded by a pathogen, our body would know how to react against these pathogens because of the presence of the antibodies. Okay, so the next function that the proteins can serve is also for transport. So I mentioned a while ago in the levels of protein structure that in the quaternary structure there is an example there that is named as the hemoglobin. The hemoglobin is present in red blood cells, and they are present there because they make the red blood cell more effective in transportation of oxygen all throughout the body, so that oxygen can be utilized for respiration. So without the hemoglobin, the red blood cell would be useless in the transportation of oxygen. Otherwise, if there's no hemoglobin, then the cells would not undergo respiration. Okay, so actually the cells would rather undergo anaerobic respiration than aerobic. Okay, so the next area that the proteins can function with is in the case of movement. So in our muscles, there are protein filaments there, are protein threads there that are known as the myosin and the actin, and they are capable of undergoing contraction. Therefore, whenever these filaments contract or whenever these filaments move, they actually result to the muscle contraction itself. Therefore, if the muscle contracts, then the muscle pulls the bones, which brings about the movement. Okay. So last but not the least, in the case of structure and support, proteins can serve for this function because of the presence of keratin and collagen in our hair, nails, and skin. And in that sense, we are able to actually, there are also what do you call this? Collagen fibers that are present in our bones, and the cartilages that provide structure and support in our body. So by giving such examples to the students, then the students would understand how this protein in each example or in each role are performing. So that will be all for the subtopic protein. The last topic that we are going to discuss under the chapter on nucleic acids and proteins is about enzymes. So primarily, students should have a background of the previous topic in the previous chapter in Chemistry of Life, wherein they have already learned the basic parts or the basic areas under enzymes. So they should already know terms such as substrate molecules, active sites, denaturation. All those things should be discussed in the core parts. And enzymes, so the chapter 7 is actually being learned only by HO students. So actually HO students should be, we are actually expecting them to know these basic things. So first part, we have to start with identifying the function of enzymes, and we have to say that enzymes are involved in metabolic pathways. So when you say metabolic pathways, these are the chemical reactions that are occurring in cells, and they usually involve enzymes. So enzymes are being used in cells in very small amounts so that it actually facilitates the changing of a substrate molecule into a product. Okay, so by metabolic reactions, we have also to include, we have to differentiate the two types of metabolic reactions, wherein it involves catabolic reaction and anabolic reaction. So catabolic reaction is when we have to say that catabolic reaction is when we are trying to break down large molecules into simpler ones. So an example of that is digestion. So in the process of digestion, whenever we eat food, it actually involves the use of digestive enzymes such as amylase. And that amylase is an enzyme that facilitates the breakdown of starch into maltose. So basically, starch is a complex molecule than maltose. So that process is an example of catabolic reaction. Anabolic reaction, on the other hand, this is when we are trying to build small molecules into complex ones. So an example of this is a synthesis of molecules. For example, we have to build amino acids into polypeptides and later on into proteins. So both reactions involve the use of enzymes as well. In line with knowing what catabolic and anabolic reactions are, students should be able to know the difference between exergonic and endergonic reactions, because this is one of the most commonly asked questions in IB. In the case of exergonic and endergonic reaction, we have to actually use a graph onto which we are able to show the students how these two types of reactions are different. So in the case of endergonic reactions, so this is okay. Okay, so in the case of exergonic reactions, this is a type of chemical reaction that releases free energy. So whenever we use molecules, every molecule stores chemical energy, and this chemical energy is present in their structural arrangement. So whenever we want to release energy, we have to break, or we have to change the structural arrangement of that molecule. So in the case of exergonic reactions, which entails the release of free energy, whenever we change a substrate into a product, we are able to release free energy at the end of the process. Whereas for endergonic reactions, is the opposite, because this is when we put in energy. Hence, endergonic reactions requires energy. So instead of this graph, okay, we can also show that an endergonic reaction occurs when in this process. Okay. An example of exergonic reaction is actually respiration. So, for example, the usage of glucose to produce ATP. ATP is actually the product of respiration, which is the free energy, which is the energy molecule present in all cells.